Niccolo Machiavelli never wrote a dating guide. But if he had, 90% of men would call it manipulation. The other 10%? They'd recognize it as the brutal truth about human nature. Today, we're dissecting the 3 laws Machiavelli would have taught you about women, laws that most men violate every single day without even realizing it. Look, before you click away thinking this is some red pill nonsense or pickup artist garbage, understand this: Machiavelli studied power dynamics. And relationships? They're the ultimate power dynamic. Not in a toxic way, but in the way 2 forces interact, influence, and shape each other. Most men fail with women not because they're bad people, but because they fundamentally misunderstand the game they're playing. They think they're playing checkers when it's actually chess. And in chess, ignorance doesn't just cost you the game, it costs you your queen. So what are these laws? Law number 1 might offend you. Law number 2 will confuse you. And law number 3? It'll completely flip everything you thought you knew about attraction. Law number 1, the law of perceived scarcity. Machiavelli wrote in The Prince, men are so simple and so subject to present necessities that he who seeks to deceive will always find someone who will allow himself to be deceived. Here's what most men get catastrophically wrong: they think availability equals interest. They think being constantly accessible makes them valuable. They couldn't be more wrong. Think about it economically. What happens when supply increases and demand stays the same? Value drops. It's basic economics, but men violate this principle every single day. They text back immediately. They cancel plans with friends when she becomes available. They orbit her social media like satellites trapped in gravitational pull. And what happens? She loses interest. Not because she's shallow or playing games, but because you've violated a fundamental principle of human psychology: we value what we work for. We desire what we can't easily have. But here's the twist that most dating coaches won't tell you: this isn't about playing games or manufactured scarcity. Machiavelli would call that transparent and weak. Real scarcity comes from actually having a life worth living. From having a mission. From being genuinely busy building something that matters. When Machiavelli advised the prince to maintain power, he didn't say pretend to be powerful. He said be formidable. Actually cultivate the qualities that make you valuable. Most men think women want attention. They're half right. Women want attention from a man whose attention is valuable. Your attention has no value if you give it to everyone indiscriminately. A compliment from a man who compliments every woman is worthless. A compliment from a man with standards? That's currency. Here's the practical application: stop being available 24/7. Not as a tactic, but because you're actually building something. Have standards. Have boundaries. Have a life that would be fulfilling even if she wasn't in it. Because the moment your entire world revolves around her, you become the satellite, and satellites don't lead, they follow. Now, law number 2 is where most nice guys completely collapse. Because this law requires something most men are terrified to embrace. Law number 2, the law of benevolent dominance. Machiavelli asked the famous question: is it better to be loved than feared, or feared than loved? His answer? Ideally both, but if you must choose, fear, because love is fickle. Now, before you misinterpret this, I'm not telling you to make women fear you. That's psychotic. But here's what Machiavelli understood that modern men have forgotten: respect requires a foundation of strength. Most men approach relationships thinking they need to be nice, agreeable, and accommodating at all times. They think conflict is the enemy. They think her happiness is their sole responsibility. They think leadership is toxic masculinity. So what do? They defer every decision to her. Where do you want to eat? What movie do you want to watch? What do you think I should do with my career? They become agreeable to the point of invisibility. And women? They interpret this as weakness. Not consciously necessarily, but deep in the evolutionary psychology that's been coded over hundreds of thousands of years. Here's what Machiavelli would tell you: women don't want a tyrant, but they don't want a puppet either. They want a king who listens to his counsel but makes the final decision. They want benevolent dominance, strength tempered with wisdom. This means having opinions and standing by them. It means being willing to disagree. It means leading when leadership is required, not outsourcing every decision because you're afraid of being controlling. Think about the most attractive male characters in fiction. Don Draper, James Bond, Batman. What do they have in common? They're decisive. They have a code they don't violate. They lead. Are they perfect? No. But they are not shapeless either. The modern dating landscape has confused kindness with weakness. But Machiavelli understood they're not the same. You can be kind and strong. You can be compassionate and decisive. You can care deeply about her feelings and still maintain your frame. Here's the difference: a weak man changes his opinion based on her mood. A strong man considers her perspective but trusts his judgment. A weak man needs her approval. A strong man wants her partnership. Most men fail this law because they've been taught that masculinity itself is toxic. So they've neutered themselves, thinking that's what women want. Then they're confused when she loses attraction or when she says, "I love you, but I'm not in love with you." Practical application: make decisions. Have standards you don't compromise. Be willing to walk away if your core values are violated. Not as a manipulation tactic, but because you respect yourself enough to have non-negotiables. That's benevolent dominance. That's what Machiavelli would advise. All right, law number 3 is the one nobody talks about. Because it requires you to understand something about female nature that's been hidden in plain sight. Law number 3, the law of emotional warfare. Machiavelli wrote, "Everyone sees what you appear to be, few experience what you really are." Here's what most men catastrophically misunderstand: they think women operate on logic. They think if they present a good enough argument, if they're reasonable enough, if they explain themselves clearly enough, she'll understand and respond rationally. This is like trying to win a naval battle with cavalry. You're using the wrong weapons for the wrong battlefield. Women are emotional creatures. Not as an insult, as an evolutionary advantage. Emotions are data processing. They're rapid-fire risk assessment. They're social intelligence. Men are logical? Sure. But women are often smarter in the ways that actually matter for survival and connection. So when you're in an argument and you're listing facts and she's talking about how you made her feel, you're speaking different languages. And the man who doesn't understand emotional warfare will lose every time. Machiavelli understood that politics wasn't about truth, it was about perception. The same applies here. It doesn't matter if you're technically right if she feels you're wrong. Because her feelings are her reality. Most men's approach to conflict: defend, explain, justify, argue. They think they're in a court of law. But she's not a judge requiring evidence, she's a human requiring emotional validation. Here's what emotional warfare actually means: understanding that emotions are the primary battlefield. Not manipulating emotions, but recognizing them as legitimate and navigating them skillfully. When she's upset, she doesn't need you to solve the problem immediately. She needs to feel heard. When she's expressing concern, she's not attacking you, she's processing. When she says fine, it's not fine, and you both know it. The man who masters emotional warfare doesn't dismiss feelings as irrational. He recognizes them as information. He becomes fluent in the language of emotion while maintaining his logical core. Think about it this way: Machiavelli didn't tell the prince to ignore the people's feelings. He told him to manage them carefully. Because ignored emotions don't disappear, they ferment into resentment. Most men fail this law in one of two ways: they either become overly emotional themselves, matching her energy and escalating conflicts, or they become completely closed off, treating emotions as weaknesses to be suppressed. The Machiavellian approach? Acknowledge emotions without being controlled by them. Validate her feelings without abandoning your position. Stay calm in her storm, not dismissively, but as an anchor. Practical application: when conflict arises, listen first. Not to prepare your counter-argument, but to actually understand. Reflect what you're hearing. You feel like I'm not prioritizing you. Then, and only then, offer your perspective. This isn't weakness, it's strategy. You're fighting the battle on the actual battlefield, not the one you wish existed. The question is, will you adapt to the game as it is, or keep losing while playing the game you wish it was? Choose wisely.